Yo, what's up? What's up? It's the Hungry Millennial back again with another edition of Millennials Are. Today we have father, coach, and former coal miner and founder and director of Take Action Today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Mike Tyson. Yo, Mike, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
All right, man. What's going on?
Oh, not much, man. You know, I'm glad to get a celebrity like yourself, highly motivated individual, to come on and talk about recovery and addiction and things like that. Because it's kind of weird. Like, I was like, you actually motivated me a lot. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep just moving forward. Because I'm like, man, Mike, he got a Facebook page now? Oh, he got an Instagram? Oh, he got one of these. But like, I don't realize that I was deployed for a year. So like a lot of things happen. So how are you, bro?
I am doing awesome, man. I'm so glad to be here, dude. That was a big year you were gone, especially so this is what's going to blow your doors off right here to start your show off.
Okay.
All right. So all of that stuff that you see is because of you. Right? So listen, we had a conversation. It was probably early winter 2019, right after I was just starting to think about some of this stuff. Dude, I've never done this type of work before in my life. At the point, I'd been going to school for about a year, I think. And I think I'd been kind of talking a little bit because I talk out things on Facebook. And I think that you would have responded to a few things because I think you could tell that I was going through some changes. And I think that I was like, man, I think it was a post about LinkedIn. I was like, I'm trying to learn how to be, I've always been a coal miner my whole life. I'm trying to learn how to operate and move in a new space. How do I use these tools like LinkedIn to develop myself professionally? And I promise you, I think you were the first person to respond. And me and you ended up in a conversation later on that evening, or maybe the next day. Man, I was sitting on a safe box back in my room talking to you, and you told me, you said, what you have to do is you have to go to every meeting, attend every seminar, watch every video that you can to learn the lingo, to learn the way people communicate, to learn the subjects. And I was like, okay, man, that's what I'll do. And then you were like, and you've got to get out there and you got to put yourself out there on social media and start doing some things and really let people know what you're doing. And so, man, I took that and I ran with it. And it was such great advice because another piece of that was you said, make yourself the person that people come to when they have questions. And a year later, I have made myself that person in this field, that what I'm doing. And I say that with all humbleness because I really come from a servant's heart with all that I do. But now people are coming to me and they're asking me about the things that I talk about. They're asking me about some of the subjects that I've been talking about over the last year. Like I said, that's been a busy year that you were gone as far as our organization, because we've really, I've moved into sort of this advocate role. You know, when you and I started talking a few years back, I was kind of in this transitional phase, going from being a coal miner to, I don't know what I was going to. You know, we tried the roofing sales thing. And then
I've been there. Who did you? Who did you?
Back to normal.
You was with B2N? I was with B2N as well.
Yeah, I was there right before you. That's how I ended up connecting with you, because I think you were going through training with them. And at the time I was working with Terminex. And
yeah, what
you got to talking about a home you were working on or something.
It was
like
through
that.
Jason Stein, I think. It might have been through, was it, Jason, don't you?
Yeah,
Jason
well, he worked there at that same time too.
Because somebody said something, it's weird how those connections, look at you with the mug. Like, right. I don't know, man. Mike goes all in. Like, I finally had a conversation, and that's why I started the podcast, bro. Because like I was having all these conversations, but they were kind of going nowhere. And I value my time a lot. Like, I can make money. right? Yes. But time I can't give back to my child. I can't give it back to the troops. Like I can't give it back to my community if I'm busy telling people what the sauce is. Like nobody, it's weird. Like one day it seems like you fumble on success because people are like, oh man, you're so successful. How you do it? I'm like, these vegetables, this water,
and super greens.
You know what I'm saying? Like couple less burgers, like less breakfast. Like one of the podcasts you sent me from the brain thing, I've actually been doing that like the last 2 weeks. Like ever since I watched the podcast, he told me what he did in his routine, and you know, I'm a pragmatic person, so I'm like, if there are steps that I can do to make my life better that aren't gonna, you know, change too much, but it's gonna be slight, like, and that changed my. It's weird. It feels like I say it changed my life every week because I'm so hungry for knowledge. Yes. But like, I think it's a blessing that you were like, you had said something and I was just like, Mike, call me. I think I was actually in the Southern Illinois area at the time. I think I was visiting somebody and I was like, you know what? He just needs some encouragement right now. And it's strange because you're not a millennial, so you weren't born into technology. Technology is a totally new thing. But I think Gary Vee explained this one time. He was like, if you guys figure out technology, your life is going to change. The people that are actually going to make the major moves in technology are the older generation because they have all the knowledge and they have all of the information that we didn't have. Like we listened to instant, and y'all had to get long knowledge. You actually had to pick up a book at some point and like go line by line. I don't have to do that anymore. And we still get millennials that I'm like, dog, you know better than this. You could have Googled this in 2.5 seconds. Like I'm very short. It's kind of weird. I'm working on myself. I'm working on smiling, being more happy. And I'm just grateful every day that I can be on the earth because I'm like, it's a new opportunity to have a new conversation. Absolutely. Like, but the problem is when you're in that space, it bothers a lot of people, right? They're like, oh, you're arrogant. Oh, you're mean. Nothing bothers you. You know, and you have to watch the words that you say to other people. And like in recovery, I know you probably go through this too, because it's like you can easily say it's not that hard, but each person is fighting their own individual battle. And that means so much to me. Like, you know, that's why I'm glad I don't know. Did you recommend the book Emotional Intelligence? Okay, so I went through that book, streamlined through that one, and then I got caught on to Ego, Authority, and failure, and it changed my life. Like during the deployment, like it changed my life because I'm like, somebody said something to me about empathy, and they were like, you know what, you need to learn. So you got the muscles, you got the leadership ability. You're like a very type A personality, but if you learn how to be a chameleon, that's going to change your life. Yeah. So I started being more aware of how I was approaching people and talking to people, and I started using the troops to feed my planning process. And that's when things changed. And then I started implementing 1/3, 2/3, which is life-changing. 1/3's planning for me, 2/3 for the troop movement and everything else. 2/3 is about the troops. 1/3, I need to be tight. I need to be on it. So even during deployment, I was waking up at 04 in the morning to get to the tactical operations center, or to even if we were going out the gate on mission, I was doing that early. I made sure the troops were seeing me work out in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, sir is out there. When you go in to use the restroom, because we didn't have indoor plumbing out there, when you go in to use the restroom on base, you see sir running or stretching, or because we didn't have no weights. So I would be doing push-ups and the armbands and stuff like that. But it's crazy how like these small seeds and just a little bit of work, it ain't like you got to go crazy. You don't have to go Rambo. So that being said, like what, okay, so you telling me I inspired you to start take action today.
Hold on just a second. So what you just said right there, what'd you say in a podcast a few weeks ago? Consistent action relative to your resources.
Yeah.
That's what you have to have. It doesn't have to be huge steps. It doesn't have to be always be, you know, some great thing, and it doesn't have to always be some Zen thing, but it's that but it's consistency over the long stretch that people see you do that, because they might see you out there for a week or two. Everybody does that. But when they see you out there for 2 or 3 months, 4 months, a year, okay, so that's one of the big things that's kind of separate that I learned and applied with some of this stuff that I'm doing right now, because in the beginning, a year ago, people didn't really take me serious. I could have chose to got mad about that. You know, I could have chose to get bitter, which I saw other people that were like me that just wanted, with good intentions, wanting to serve the community, but they didn't want to take the steps I did with getting organized like I did. And they would get frustrated. Why won't people support me? Why won't people get behind us? You know, and I could have taken that same mentality too, because I had people that wouldn't return my phone calls, would start conversations with me and then ghost me. And I could have got bitter like that too. But I knew if I applied that consistent action over the course of a matter of time, which is usually about a year, you know, sometimes it's longer than that, but that consistent action over that year, and people realize that you are who you say you are, it opens a lot more doors and it changes minds about you. And it really puts you into a rare category of leadership, because a lot of people cannot be consistent in their actions.
You know, and Mike, it's interesting that you say that, because I started off listening to Grant Cardone. You know, he's a very, you know, like Southern guy, you know, and he was addicted to drugs, and he took that mentality and he turned it into an empire. And he's into some religious things that, you know, I'm not so into, but I don't judge anybody's course of how they got there. If they're inspiring, motivating people, I take that inspiration, because I don't idolize anybody. That's the problem, is people, they start doing these different things. You're like, yeah, I was so motivated, and then I found out this, and I was like, that doesn't mean you throw away that because this happened. You know. And so I'm like, you know what, like, I was working at a car dealership, and we was trying to up our vehicle count and all that stuff. I was an internet data specialist. This is while I was in college. I was making minimum wage, you know, just going in happy to go to work. And my internet data sales manager, shout out to Matt Sears, he was like, hey, well, if you want more money, how you gonna bring me more money? I was like, well, I found out I had to do more. Right. So that meant more pictures. That meant more of these. I mean, I never got major money out of it, but I learned so much. That's where I found my passion for detailing cars. You know, it's weird, the things that you pursue with that type of audacity that's going to change your life, that escalates. It just continues to escalate. And in the military, it's hard, because as much as people are motivated, there's a ceiling on that in the military. A lot of people, they've gotten there. They've had the deployments. They've you know, fought bullets, and, you know, and I talk about this in past episodes on the podcast, is we'll get a new soldier who's not a new soldier. You know, he's, you know, 15, 20-year veteran, Ranger tabs, you know, everything that a kid could imagine that a warrior, a soldier could be, but he's not bringing it that day. He's not bringing it when he comes to that unit. This is his down path, and you never know who's watching. And those are the pivotal things that have really changed my life. I go from Grant Cardone to Gary Vee to all these other people, and they just like document, dude. Like they're just going out there and doing it and having conversations. You remind me a lot of Grant Cardone, because, you know, you got the Southern accent thing going on, and it
must
just
be good looking too.
Well, in the tenacity that you bring to the table now is different. Like, even with this podcast, there are certain people that, like, I've probably sent out, you know, asked probably maybe 60 people or so, and I've got 27 responses to the original survey. You know, everything that I've created professionally, but like, I find so much in the passion of doing everything and navigating the path that I just keep going. You see another person, and 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 you're like, I've got, you know, 2,500 friends on Facebook, and probably 50 to 75% of them are millennials. And then we can have a conversation like this with a non-millennial. This is where the real juice comes out, because we can learn from millennials, and we can learn from, you know, just Generation X, boomers, everybody, Z. You know what I mean? I'm open to everybody, but if you don't create the platform, ain't nobody gonna come. You know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't create it, we're just wandering around in circles. Like, some of the greatest employees I ever had as a general manager were recovering, you know, alcoholics. were recovering drug addicts. Some of the best soldiers I've ever known. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because it made sense. I'm like, people are hurting. Like, any one of us are 1 second away from picking up a joint, a cigarette. Then, hey, bro, hit this weed. You know what I'm saying? And then it's, a real epidemic we had in the military was K2. They called it spice. Yeah, you see, the thing is
that stuff went through the coal mines too. About
it is potpourri.
About 2010 or something like that. I know, and there was so many because
that's when I went to basic, bro.
Yeah, they could pass the drug test on it.
Oh man.
So the coal miners would do it because they was all weed heads anyway that couldn't smoke anymore because of the randoms. You don't want to go home and lose $100,000 a year job because you dropped dirty. So but that's what I was like, dude, that's potpourri with a chemical sprayed on it.
Do you hear music in the background?
Yeah, that's my phone. I didn't want to turn around and answer it. So
you're good.
I should have had it on vibrate. You're gonna edit this, aren't you?
No, we live, Mike. This is the middle is the middle. It's okay though. It's a real podcast.
I apologize for that. I should have had it on.
No worries. You're fine. You know what? It's a growing point in the email. I'm just gonna add that in the email that I sent out to everybody. So, but
I'll go millennial on you. Go ahead. What were you saying?
What are you saying, bro?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It works though. Unfortunately, it's funny. I had to, with work, I had to stop. I literally put my phone on. My phone is on Do Not Disturb like all day. Like if I'm dating somebody, they're like, "Why are you ignoring me?" Like, because I got to work so I can make money, so I can take you out for a drink. You know what I mean? Like,
I can't do that.
I
can't do it, man. I usually have my phone all day. Like sometimes it gets on silent, and I'll miss a couple phone calls or something like that.
Well, Apple Watch, I ain't got it on me, but that Apple Watch, it'll change your life. Whatever phone company you with, Samsung, it works too. But like I'm
Android, bro.
Hey, get you that Samsung. I got Samsung buds that I use at work. They actually work better. I don't like carrying them little weird white iPhone headphones with me. They just look weird. I look like an alien. Like, what is this?
They do look weird, man. That's iPhones like that. It's like you got to pay all this extra money to be in their club, and then they're gonna make you look silly too.
Well, but the functionality, once you get an iPhone, it's like you get hooked.
Yeah, but like, and you can't get hacked.
Speaking of iPhone though, the Steve Jobs of the world and all those people, they started just like us.
Yeah, so that's an interesting topic, So think about that. Like we think about Steve Jobs, which Steve Jobs, we hold him in high esteem still. But you think about somebody like a Bill Gates, didn't he start off as just a normal person? And
both of them were actually like heavy pot smokers.
Yeah, there's a big
like they were
pot smokers playing video games.
That's what it was, right? Like. The culture is all around us.
So, and then you think about Jeff Bezos. He started Amazon. There are pictures on Facebook of him in his garage starting Amazon. And unfortunately, I guess because these people take unscrupulous measures along the way or somehow, but we've gotten to a place where we demonize people that are able to achieve high levels of success.
Jordan Peterson talks about that.
Yeah. So I think that there's, and I don't know if I guess there's something to, like I said, the process of how you get there, be good with, be careful who you step on because, in 20 years, you might.
Yeah, I get it.
Be alienated because, you took advantage of some people.
But the counterculture is to hate the rich.
Yeah, it is. That's what I'm saying.
The billionaires.
And these are not people that were born into money. These were people that hustled.
And they're not sitting, and Mike, they're not sitting on a board saying we're going to keep all these people down and step on their heads.
Yeah.
I know millionaires, and most of them are extremely generous people. Jimmy John, say what you want about his ethics relative to things that are technically legal.
Yeah.
he's a great guy.
So there has to be some sort of standard in how you get there.
But he throws concerts. He was really when you worked for him as an employee, a lot of it trickled all the way down to the bottom. Like he would do lavish stuff for his employees. And so but it's interesting. You got to start, and I'm glad you started. So what else inspired you? So tell me about if you feel comfortable talking about it, how you were affected by drug use or any of those things.
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel comfortable.
Okay, I don't want to.
No, and it's good because you never know how people are. So, and I started as a juvenile delinquent. So my issue started long before the drug use did. When I was about 14 years old, I basically turned into just an antisocial punk. It's really about what it was, dude. I was extremely dysfunctional. And I ended up getting into a lot of trouble. By the time I was 15 years old, I was actually standing in front of a judge the first time. A couple grand theft auto charges and several misdemeanors that were enough to be a couple felonies. So here I was at 15 years old standing in front of a judge, and people were wanting to lock me in the worst juvenile prisons that you could put somebody in the 80s and 90s in Georgia.
Wait, hold on. So you saying even as a white male, 15-year-old, they wanted to throw you and lock you up?
I'm telling you that
I think that's
this white 15-year-old, dude.
I think that's and the reason why I highlight that is I think that's powerful.
Yeah,
because a lot of people put a face, you know what I'm saying, put a demographic on something, and people are. I made a podcast about equality like a couple days ago, and it was just about the fact that once you start blanketing everything, people that are hurt. Because there are a lot of people like you that will never have a conversation with a guy like me just because they are bitter because they feel like America is against them because they've had different opportunities. You know what I mean? But they're still hurting that community. So if you shut that person off and you don't allow them to express themselves or even say what's on their mind, I'm not opposed to that. Yeah. I'm just, once you've said it, now we have to have a conversation about why you think that's okay. But we can never have that conversation if we're canceling people.
That's
anyway,
right.
Carry on, 15-year-old Mike.
Well, but like what you just said, man, there's something very powerful in what you just said, because it's those conversations that help us define what is moral and what is good in society. Mm-hmm. When we don't have those conversations, it allows for extreme ideology, because that is going to happen no matter what, no matter who we are. Yeah, it's something with the human condition that when we get isolated in little pockets by ourselves, we adhere to extreme ideology. But when we have conversations about it, we can tell people, man, you sound like an idiot right now.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You need to get educated. You need to figure something out. But when we can't have those conversations, you get people isolated to themselves, and that's when things get really toxic, really fast.
Yeah, no, for sure. Man, it's weird. I don't know if you read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
No, I've never read the book, but I know about Viktor Frankl's work. It's in a lot of our psychology stuff.
I forgot.
This is one of the things that I love about you, is that you are so broad based on some of the subjects that you not only read, you study, you learn from.
But Mike, that's hard because it also makes me a little scatterbrained sometimes. Like I'm like, oh, that one. Okay, I could talk about this all day. But the other problem is people in society aren't having deep conversations anymore. It's typically about, oh, work sucks. Oh, we got a lot of packages. Oh, we got to go to drill. I'm like, hold on. There's a backlog to that because you blessed because you can go to drill. Like I had a conversation with one of my troops who was he worked with my platoon a little bit while we were on deployment. He was like, man, I drove to that unit 5 hours for 15 minutes. I was like, you realize you just made $40 an hour technically, right? Because you got the rest of the weekend. They paid you, $200 a day or so, whatever it is per day, $150, $1 a day per this drill weekend. You came and did what you need to do, and it was to grab your gear And we complaining on social media like you ain't just get the bag, and now you can go back tonight and you can work another shift if you wanted to. I mean, that's what I would do, but I don't recommend people be crazy, like I've had to learn. Like I've got a new a review that I'm doing of one of 50 Cent's new books where he talks about like the balance of work and sleep. But anyway, carry on with your story.
Yeah, 50 Cent was a hard working one too, man. I tell you what, man, you talk about hustling. I mean, somebody getting ahead from hard work.
So you went from the juvenile system.
Back to so basically, dude, from 15 to 18, I spent in different boys' homes and different types of juvenile facilities.
Okay.
So I spent about 6 months in that period, because here's what would happen. There really was no other recourse probably for anybody in my life, because I was that wild. I would get out, and within weeks I would be good. And then within weeks I would just like something would short circuit in my brain and I'd just be off acting crazy. So that's why they basically just ended up stuffing me in a rehab. I didn't even have a drug problem back then, because I spent so much time locked up that I couldn't get into drugs and alcohol as a teenager. So, dude, I attribute some of that to why I was able to make it through some of the drug use later on, because my brain got more developed before the drug use really started, because most of my friends started around 14 or 15. I just happened to.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well,
so and then I basically continued that pattern on into my adulthood. But so when I get out of this 18-month-long rehab as an 18-year-old, basically age out of the system, I managed to keep my life together for about 4 months. And then that was when the drug addiction really started. I started drinking all the time. I ended up in 2019, I ended up being diagnosed with bipolar manic depressive. So basically what my life was like a bunch of this and then a bunch of this. And so really what I was caught up in was the grips of mental illness a little bit. And then also I was dealing with some trauma that happened along the way of my incarceration. I mean, there's something about the formulative years of my life being spent in those situations where, to be honest, there were times when I would have to make a decision. Am I going to eat? It's funny, but am I going to eat my cornbread or not? Not cornbread, but it was little brownies that we would have, because there would be people that would bully you and try to push you around. So you couldn't let them do like that. So this stuff created trauma in my life. And this is one of the things that I talk about in a lot of the stuff that I do when we talk about recovery, is that there are a lot of people out there that are dealing with situations and experiences like that have left them with trauma. And that a lot of times when we get into addiction and heavy substance use, that trauma is really at the core and at the base of things once you get past some of those issues. I really think that addiction is definitely a chronic and progressive disease, but it's also something that is a symptom of a larger issue, whether it be mental illness or it be trauma. I mean, and really a lot of what we talk about in everything anymore with substance use, homelessness, all of it, and it is trauma. And that is something that I am really curious to see how your experiences, and your leadership ability helps other veterans deal with some of that trauma, because some of the stuff that you guys have experienced, and maybe not particularly you, and we'll probably get into some of this later, so I don't want to get ahead of myself.
No, you're good.
But you talk about millennials recovering. I really put a lot of thought into that, and what I got thinking about is looking at what you guys are recovering from, because you think about almost 19 years of a perpetual state of warfare. That your generation, more than anybody, my generation dealt with the development of technology and with the internet. Your generation dealt with war on a level that most of us didn't.
Yeah, I think it's weird. And like I've got to be better at this, but my brand of assistance is personal accountability. And that's hard for a lot of people to face. And I'm learning to be more emotionally intelligent about it. I'm learning to process it, people for who they are without judgment. And part of that process is this podcast. And
it is.
And because I started, you know, like you see, like every now and then I'm like, because I've got so much broad knowledge about a bunch of different things that I want to like, yeah, I got to experience there too. You know, the other day I started creating chapters for a book that I want to write one day, but it's been weird. It's been different because in the military we have a bunch of resources, and externally the country has a bunch of resources for veterans. The problem is subduing that pride and going and getting those resources and saying that I have a problem and I need help and I need to get it now. And a lot of my brothers and sisters in arms aren't ready for that conversation. And I don't know if it's just because it's for me. And the hardest part is when you move through the officer ranks, they think that, oh, this is just another officer trying to tell us what to do or what we need to do. And I've never done anything in the military really for personal gain, except for like, I just want to make sure my paycheck's coming on time. Right. But you know how the government works at times. I love it to death. Like it's helped me out a lot. I'd be scared to depend but on they're redoing the educational system. I'm trying to go get my master's as well. So
that's awesome.
It's just there's so many resources. Like, and even the class, a military course that I took a couple weeks ago, it was virtual. I got a bunch of links and stuff, but a lot of people don't want to have the conversations about that. But a lot of times you got to have a platform, you know? So in the comments section, you know, in the description for this video, I'm probably me and you are going to talk over, you know, at a later date, you know, cause this is going to be, you know, it's going to be put out soon. But we're going to talk about like some of the tags and stuff, because sometimes the best way to reach the people is through a medium that they understand and that they can grasp versus, hey, da-da-da-da-da. And, you know, I stopped asking why people did it, but how. Yeah. And when and where, and all the questions around why that don't sound nearly as offensive as why. Because if I'm as an officer, if I'm counseling you and chaptering you out with the why, I've also failed you. That's interesting. We're failing our people. Mm-hmm. I'm failing. If something happens with one of my troops, and then I've had some soldiers that I've had to give some bad evals, I failed them. Yes. Because I didn't get them the help. Right. And it's that extreme ownership that's going to change their lives and my life and other people's lives. Absolutely. But we've got to get real with the conversation. That's why every time somebody posts on Take Action, you know, today, and I see it, I heart it and I like it, because I'm like, I'm here and I'm fighting with you. And a lot of times it's just support and having conversations. Mm-hmm. There's a guy that I'm going to have on. He's a sergeant on in the South Carolina Guard. He's getting out here pretty soon, but he wrote a book on trauma, you know, so I guess I'm having those conversations through the best medium that I possibly can. And it's tough because and a lot of people take this the wrong way too. When I became a captain over there, it changed things. Like, I had to distance myself even more. And that wasn't out of my own fruition. That was out of for the troops. The boundary. Well, because they couldn't. It's a weird line when you get promoted. It's a weird line when you level up. It's a weird line as an officer, because it's a very and that's why I also started podcasting more while I was over there too, because it's a lonely life and you have these thoughts that you have to get out. Mm-hmm. And typically people aren't going to listen directly, so you put it out there and be like, well, if somebody happens to listen to this and it changes one person's life, all it takes is one person's life, and they create a tree. They plant that seed, you know, and it creates a forest, because all those seeds are falling around it. And then pretty soon you've got the Shawnee, and then pretty soon you got the rainforest, you know, and pretty soon the world's got trees all over the place. That's right. But that's why I started this, to have those conversations. Like, I'm also not the dude that's like, yeah, let's go out and ruck 8 miles. But maybe one day I will become the guy that's doing all the warrior competitions and stuff like that with horrible knees. But just to reach the veterans and have the conversation. 12 years in, or no, it's 11 officially on my LES. 11 years in, and I've got it, man. I'm taking vitamins every day. Like, that's why I do it, for that long course.
Dude, you have to, man. I mean, we don't think about it, especially when we're younger, which we've got so much more knowledge at our fingertips.
What I learned from people like you.
Yeah.
I learned from my pops. I saw the vitamins. I'm like, why do dude always take these vitamins every day? I'm like, oh, we don't really get the supplements that we need as adults.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, I started taking supplements just probably about 2 or 3 years ago. And dude, I take some stuff like they're called nootropics. And what they do is they help improve cognitive function, stuff like that, and it's just different combinations of different things. It's just like with your physical body, but there are things that we can take that stimulate neural networking, stimulate focus, all of this stuff. And it's not stuff that, like a limitless pill, like Bradley Cooper, and you can figure everything out before everybody else does. But it helps to spur some of that stuff on to kind of help you rewire some of that neural network on some things. So you can take these things and they help increase your focus. And then as you learn in the process, so it becomes an enhancement. It's like a cognitive enhancement. It helps you retain that information, helps you focus on it, and helps wire those neural networks that way. But that's on a completely different subject. So you were back to talking about giving people a platform. And that is so interwoven with what I do through Take Action Today. So we launched our Facebook page, just over a year ago. Actually, the 22nd is going to be our 1-year anniversary. That was when we kind of we filed our paperwork to form as a corporation. But also just before that, we launched our Facebook page. We were having meetings at the time, and like board meetings. We started having board meetings in January of last year. And we really wanted to make things more tangible for people to think that, man, it's more than an idea, it's action. So we started a Facebook page, social media. And I heard this guy tell me one time, to get active on social media. So we started doing that. And what I took the mentality is that I wanted to build a platform for people in recovery to be able to tell their story. People that had gone out there, we see so much emphasis put on people that are strung out on the worst day of their life in the grip of their addiction, and then we don't really see much about the story that happens later on when they find recovery and go on to be productive members of society.
Yeah, for sure.
There are millions of people out there in this country that are recovering from terrible, debilitating situations that they have overcome, and some of them have gone on to do great and tremendous things,
amazing things,
but we wanted to give we living in Southern Illinois down here, there's not a lot of resources for much of anything, let alone a social issue like that, or like dealing with homelessness. So one of the things that we figured out really early on was that we wanted to start building a housing facility for people that we could take off the street and we could help them get clean. And what I learned through that was that we couldn't just open one up. And it wasn't because of certifications and stuff, but it was because there needed to be this huge support network. And Southern Illinois didn't have it. So we needed to have a platform for people in recovery to build this network. It was really important for me to use people in recovery because part of the concept of what we do is empowering people in recovery to take control of their life and to
take action today.
Exactly. So we wanted to empower them to be able to build the recovery community that they wanted to have. For us, by us kind of mentality. What was that? The FUBU logo?
Yeah. What you know about FUBU, Mike?
Shout out to LL Cool J.
That's funny.
But so
Might got a little culture in him. Okay,
that's right. I grew up in the 90s, man. And in the 80s, man. Mama said knock you out, dude. I had to back in juvie, I had to sell it one time, dude. He rapped the whole like album all the time to me with that Mama said knock you out album. Yeah. Like all the lyrics, that and one of the Prince albums, man. It was like all I heard for like 2 months one time. It was insane.
Man, hey, when I'm in the gym, sometimes I gotta throw on that I'm bad. You know what I'm saying? I'm bad. Get through this, right. You know what I'm saying? Bench press, you know. So LL Cool J, man, like I always wanted to have the honeys in the muscle. You see, I got the little hoop earrings. You know?
Yeah, dude eat the apple.
Man, he was a monster. Go ahead, though.
Then he made Deep Blue. Yeah, and I don't know, or what was it? The shark movie, man. That was a little wild.
It was weird, but I'm glad he, was played a little strong in that one because what you in there cooking, LL? You know what I'm saying? Like you went from
the 90s action movies, man. Man, that might have even been in the 2000s, but I totally lost my track.
No, you good, brother. You was talking about the housing.
Yeah, so we realized that there needed to be a larger network, and to build that, we wanted to build a community. So at the core of everything that we do is building a community for people in recovery to be empowered. A lot of that empowerment comes from having a platform to have your voice heard. Mm-hmm. And that's and that's really what we've seen over the last year and a half, right? That there are people out there that are tired of not having their voices heard, and so a lot of these people need a platform. And I really think that that's one of the reasons why, one of the things that makes you when you talk about millennials, gives that generation and Generation Z so much power is that they all have a platform at their fingertips, so easy.
Yeah,
that anybody can have a voice, but there are some people that need that developed for them. So we wanted to give that to people in recovery, people that have overcome homelessness, people that know what it's like to be in those situations, and then to build a new life out of it, and not go ahead.
And that's powerful, because the other day, while I was on deployment, the first sergeant, because I rub people wrong because I'm so intense sometimes they just don't get it, Well, I needed to change and develop a little bit. Whatever. But I worked on it. I worked through it. But she was like, I didn't know you were homeless, Captain Hamilton. And I was like, yeah. Like, and it is deeper than that, Mike. I was homeless as a child. Mm-hmm. Like almost every Christmas, I spent in a homeless shelter.
Wow.
Like with my mom and my 5 sisters. Maybe we had 4 at the time. It's a lot of them. As we got older, it kind of balanced out. I love all of them. Shout out to y'all. I wouldn't be the man that I am today without y'all.
4 or 6 of you
cooking me popcorn for my birthday because we was broke. We didn't have no cakes. It's just hot sauce with the popcorn. You feel me? I mean, but people don't realize that. They see you and how strong you are, and I'm like, my past was my strength. That's powerful. Because in Carbondale, in Southern Illinois, they had the homeless shelter. They had all these things, but the women's center was the place to be. But after a couple of days, like you got like a week or something in there. Like you had to leave during the daytime and you come back at night. Mm-hmm. What do 5 kids and everybody else do at night? Like Mike, there was times where we had eggs. Like the dude, he used to smoke. The cook used to smoke. So the eggs that we was having taste like ash. Mm-hmm. And then years later, when I went to the military, we had them same eggs. But
you realized it wasn't ashes.
It was just the powder egg. I don't know. I'm like, dang, homie, he really did smoking this,
Man, that's funny you mentioned that, dude. I think about that all the time because I used to work in the restaurant industry, dude. And back in the day, everybody smoked. What they smoked back there, cooking your steak, flipping your steak over.
You know what I'm saying?
At the Sizzler, I worked at the Sizzler for about 1.5 years one time, dude.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
It's a good thing we don't smoke anymore.
So y'all got the homeless shelter. Did y'all get it set up? Like
no.
You still working on that? It's still in the works?
So that's in our long-term plans. So right now what we're doing, so like I said, we're about to celebrate our first year, which is really cool because we set the goal for our first year to become a 501c3 not-for-profit. Did that.
What's that?
So it's where things are tax deductible.
Okay,
You know,
cool.
you're basically
501c3.
Yeah, 501c3, yeah, with the federal government. You know, so like we're a legit charity. We're a legit not-for-profit, just like UNICEF. You know what I'm saying? So we did that, and then we also wanted to get to where we were launching our first recovery resource center, which we're going to start doing next month.
Really?
So we moved in through some more work. So kind of what some sage advice like somebody gave me one time about going to every meeting I could and getting involved in everything I could. I got involved with all kinds of groups and councils and stuff. So I now serve on about 4 different not-for-profit boards. So I serve on one in Johnson City also, and they were wanting to buy a house as a community. They wanted to do a community development center in Johnson City because it's just, you know, typical Southern Illinois community, you know, and there's nobody there doing anything right now. So this church spun off a 501c3. They bought a house, and we're going to move in there, and we're going to start delivering. What we've taken to developing is what's called recovery coaching services, which I believe you're familiar with life coaching and stuff like that, where it's real goal orientated, real motivation oriented, where you're trying to empower a person to be self-directed in their life.
Sounds like my podcast.
Exactly.
I was like, I can't coach all y'all individually because I got to still work and make ends meet. But here's a podcast. If you listen, I'll try to help you.
And it's an amazing medium for that. You know what I'm saying? And
it was crazy.
Like we were talking about with a platform earlier, and with my podcast too. That's what I recognized early on. It was that the power of it to get people on to tell their story in something like what we do, which is really in the not-for-profit industry, but especially in recovery, is we do a lot of storytelling. You know, it's advocating for resources for groups of people that need a voice. So you want to help them learn how to tell their story because they're compelling stories. People love hearing those stories, but when people don't have a platform to tell their story, you know, and then there's something healing that happens. When a person can come on and they can tell their story a little bit, because for one, there's something powerful in feeling heard. You know,
you don't feel alone.
No, you don't. Even if you don't see eye to eye, just somebody hearing you.
My troops, when we were deployed, they started like an EO, like an equal opportunity group, where they talked about hard subjects. They talked about male and females. They talked about stigmas. They talked about dating. They talked about race. Like, it got real heated, but it was beautiful because guess who showed up? The captain. And guess who did his best to shut up? You know, I'm always talking, unfortunately. I did my best to shut up, but I learned a lot. The troops did the same thing.
I think that this is where your generation is getting it right. Is the conversations. And I know we talk a lot about cancel culture and you today, but you got to realize that when we talk about things like that, we're talking about an extreme minority, but the overall general millennial generation, it will have conversations about tough subjects. You know,
well, and that's hard. And the problem is it's also getting to the root of those tough subjects that, like, a lot of people they're not really ready to hear. So this is a little off tangent, but earlier I saw a comparison to Sue Bird, who plays for the Lakers WNBA, you know, female team, and LeBron James, and they were like, LeBron makes millions and she makes 100,000s, but it wasn't a realistic dialogue.
Right.
Because people were just posting it out of emotion, like, how's this fair? And I'm like, I wanted to comment and say this is disingenuous, because, like, I wanted to ask those people, how many WNBA games have you watched in your entire lifetime? Like, you've got to have viewers and people that want a product or need something. There's a supply and demand, and and I'm gonna be honest, it's just maybe if they lower the rims in women's basketball, like, you get them jamming, you know what I'm saying? Because I know some girls who, they can hoop. I mean, you're a girls coach for softball, you know? And so, like, there are some very talented women, but we have to be realistic and be like, where's the revenue for this?
Yeah.
And that's where the pragmatism comes in, because I'm like, we're not having realistic conversation. You haven't done enough research to speak on this. And that's why I also started a podcast, because one of Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life is tell the truth, or at least don't lie. And a major part of that is getting to the truth, finding the truth, and asking people about the truth. So that's why I'm also glad that you came on the podcast, because I can speak and speculate about things, but you really don't know. And it's also taught me to stop speculating and start asking the hard questions, because you don't know. And you'll find out that a lot of people make assumptions about you and everybody else that they have no clue about. You know, people don't realize, like, even at work, like, there are certain situations that are going on, like, counter to what everybody else's route's doing. So perfect example, you might have 90 stops and I might have 70 stops, but that doesn't show that, like, I'm spread out through 3 towns. You know what I mean? Like, so you're like, they've got 20 less stops than me, but you don't really know the deep root of it. But we're so quick to snap judgment that that's what we do.
So these issues, and like you talk about, really a lot of things in life are complex and nuanced. There's lots of shades of gray.
Way too
very rarely are things black and white.
No.
You know, and that was something that I came to at a point in my faith when I came out of homelessness, when I went through a faith-based program called Teen Challenge. It was about a 1.5 year long program.
I remember hearing Teen Challenge.
So it's not a Christian rehab. It's a discipleship program. So you're basically living in a modern monastery. You know, as we studied the Bible, we worked and we studied the Bible, man. Dude, I picked apples, I picked blueberries, strawberries, and split wood, and then would study the Bible. So it was kind of a weird dynamic, but it changed my life.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, it changed my life. But when I got out of it, I was so black and white in my thinking, because I had been fed just one dialogue for so long.
That's deep.
That all I saw was black and white, and everything was judgmental. And what somebody told me was that you have to be careful swinging the sword of truth, because it's a double-edged sword and it cuts both ways. And you end up cutting your own people.
Well, and that's, oh man, that's so powerful, because 5 years ago, me started swinging the sword of truth, but like there was a lot of truths that I wasn't facing. And I was like, even some of the reviews that I've done on other YouTube stuff, you know, like whether it was dating, you know, I learned a lot from Alan Roger Curry's Mode 1, you know, telling what you're really thinking, you know, don't, you know, and I made a pact with myself, like coming back from the deployment, you know, don't lie. Like, even, you know, if you're looking for a relationship for something else and somebody's, you know, like those are the hardest things that, like, when you learn stuff, you want to go full in hardcore, right? That was young soldier me too. Like, I thought it was all black and white, but until you get that platoon leader time, until you see what real command struggles are. Like, I asked the commander, the company commander that the unit that I deployed with, because I wasn't organic to that unit. I was actually a battalion. I was actually a staff officer, but they said they needed a platoon leader. I'm like, you know what? Send me, I'll go. And I was like, this could be the break that I need to change my life financially, and, you know, the relationship with my child, right? I could supply more. Like, I was heavy in debt before I left. I started a Dave Ramsey plan. I saved up my little savings plan, and that's all I had to get to Kuwait. People don't know that. Like, there's such a weird facade that people have going on that you don't know what's real and what's not. And then you get back, and I have to also be cautious today, you know, when I talk to people, because you start swinging that sword and you're like, they're not there in that process. Like, they're in a different part of their process. Maybe they just need something basic, right? That's consistent with your resources. Back to that, right? At some point I had to start, like, just not ordering too many burgers, you know, until I figured out what veggies I liked or what meat, you know, and I'm still learning and growing. Like, it might sound weird, but like a lot of the girls that I've been on dates with have actually changed my life. 'Cause they're like, oh, you know, we're having a small like, I learned from way too many conversations. Sometimes I drive myself nuts.
Beautiful thing, though, man. And
because
It will drive you nuts.
It does. Because this girl was like, yeah, I'm having veggies and salmon. I'm like, so I'll buy a bunch of salmon. Didn't really like that. But then I was like, how can I incorporate veggies? So like one day I'm at Aldi's and I'm like, they got these 79-cent bags. This is 2 lunches worth. You feel me? So you striking gold right there with your finances, because you like, I could just throw this thing in the microwave, and everybody out here meal prepping, look at making these beautiful meals. I could throw this in the microwave, take them little frozen chicken breasts, thaw them, a couple days ahead of time, throw them in the pan. I got my lunch in 5 minutes and I only spent $1 on it. Right? I'm weird like that, but it's those little things. But I'm like, if I'm slashing, like you said, if I'm going out with that sword, I'm not learning, I'm not developing. That's the beautiful part about life, is you never stop learning. You're going to be learning and growing the whole time. So if you focus on the process, it's going to be beautiful for you, because you can compare it to every other space you've been to in the entire world. Every problem you've ever had, a lot of it just feels like small pennies, Mike. I'm telling you, like, people look at me crazy because I wear the shorts, because they're more functional when I'm delivering packages. Like if it's 50, 40 degrees or above, I'm probably wearing shorts during FedEx, because I'm like, I need to be mobile, right? You warm up in the truck a little bit, and then you just keep going. If you keep going, you stay warm, and it's just functionality. But like a lot of people look at that and I'm like, they're like, are you cold? Why aren't you complaining like everybody else? Why you let them treat you like this? I'm like, because you don't realize in the background, I'm compensated fairly well, because I decided I was going to go above and beyond. I was going to leave nothing on the table.
Right.
Because I remember a me that would come back with 20 packages to the warehouse. I'm not ashamed to say that. I was a starter. I was a beginner. I was sore every night. I would come home every night and I would go get the burger from Burger King, and I would drink all the sodas, and I would, all these things.
Dude,
once I started doing all the small things, like, dog, what I don't do? I don't buy soda. I don't put it in the house. If I am going to have a soda or some type of beverage or something, Mike, I got 5, but my life has changed so much because of part of that deployment too. I got 5 bottles of wine in my room that I haven't touched in like weeks. Like I don't have the, and I used to, every night I used to, have a little drink, just to calm your nerves, because you're in pain. And I just look at it, like, if I'm hanging out with a lady friend, I'm like, well, I got some wine at the crib. You want to have a glass? Cool. Fine. But there's a process to that versus me craving something else. Like I crave the process so much that I'm like, after I go deliver a route, heavy or light, I'm coming to podcast. I was like, you know what? Because I tried to hit you up earlier, and I was gonna be like, Mike, can we just do this, tomorrow? And I'm like, nah, dog, this is you. This is what you got a passion for. You better get on in there, champ. Get in there, dog. Well, and all the people you talk to, like, I had to make this platform for the people, because if I make it for the people, my why will help you overcome anyhow. Your why. Like, people don't have a why for what they do. That's why they quit. When you have a why for what you do, it changes everything. And I see that growth in you, and that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I see that growth. I'm like, take action today.net. I look at your email and I'm like, that's powerful. My man, he got his affiliate link on here, and he got his website, and he got all this. And that's a lot for somebody of your generation to throw all that together with limited resources. Like,
dude,
like college.
You see that website?
Get here.
You see that website?
Yeah.
I did that.
Okay.
All I could do was Facebook until we launched that website. I advertised. I couldn't find anybody, because I'm like you, dude. Like you talk about that technology gap. That's a real thing, man.
It really is.
It has been extremely difficult for me to learn to do stuff. And then I got into the coal mines where I didn't have to learn some of that stuff.
Y'all still got canaries down there?
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, we do. No, but 11 years in that technology went even farther. So 11 more years I was behind. And so when I decided to enroll in online, I take online classes. Okay. So that was
proud of you, by the way.
Thank you. that was a huge leap, and it was a huge stretch to me. There again, it was something just like with starting the not-for-profit stuff, where I had to really stretch myself. I had to commit myself, you know, and you talk about that extreme ownership.
Yeah.
I had to give up things that hurt because this goal meant so much to me. I've always had a GED. I've always thought that I was just a dumb coal miner. So for me to go to college and to actually get a degree, heaven forbid, when I started making good grades, oh my gosh, man, it's amazing my head fits through the door sometimes. but so I advertised trying to find somebody to help me design the website for me. You know, we're a volunteer organization. We don't have any money. So it was really difficult. Couldn't get anybody really to do it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on here and I'm going to watch this YouTube video, watch a 25-minute YouTube video on WordPress. And I played with it all day till I built our website. And I'll admit that it's not the most primo website. No, but I think you appreciate because of that technology gap, because I've heard you mention it twice. And I'm going to tell you what, that's something that a lot of people don't think about. But as far as my experience, just you mentioning that and recognizing that, it means something to me, because that's a real thing. And for me, like I say, developing that website was just an amazing feat for me, you know?
Well, and the thing is, I benefit both ways on that, because I'm like, people think like, so I went up to Chicago this past weekend to like get my gear. One of the sergeants was like, "Hey, somebody showed me a screenshot of you was on TV or something," and I'm like, I guess kind of like it's a podcast. Like it was, you know, it's just been all the rage, and like all the people that have taught me and learned and grow, like it brings me to tears, you know, like watching all that stuff and like watching people develop. And you know, this is just between me and you, and I guess the podcast now, but there was a moment after I grabbed my bags and I just wept, Mike, because of the deployment of how much I learned and I grew. And it was just powerful, because those troops really changed my life. Like when I put that, like they really changed my life, because it opened me up to a bunch of possibilities, and how much they needed good leaders, how much they needed just somebody to listen to them, even the ones that didn't make the best decisions. When they were in the dumps about their bad decisions, my job as a leader is not to judge. It's to take care of the troops. That means the ones that are in trouble and the ones that are not. And that is so fulfilling to me, because at any point in time, a dumber me could have been in those situations. Like people forget about grace.
Yes.
People forget about grace. We haven't had that conversation.
Is that how your generation does the heart?
Yeah. I think we got that from y'all. We out here doing something like, oh no, sorry, I'm not in the gang. Anybody, just when y'all see this podcast, I wasn't trying to do that. I don't know how they do it now, but yeah, it's deep, and it's deeper than us. And those roots, they infiltrate everything. And with cancel culture, a lot of stuff, like people don't realize the root was because everybody was taught these things, and hurt people.
Yes.
Like I know a lot of people who went through hurt that hurt other people that they didn't even know they were hurting other people, because they didn't know that way was wrong. And so in society, we create these ethos and pathos that, you know, like, but ethics are kind of tied to the environment and the subculture that you're a part of.
Yes.
I was listening to a podcast about a reformed pimp, and he explained that like that was a way of life, because he was a part of a subculture of the Black community that didn't have anything. And so he wasn't, you know, human trafficking became a thing where, like, you know, obviously it's bad, but like a lot of the women that he was with, they didn't have another way to make any type of money. He didn't have a way to make any type of money. You come out with felonies on the street from something that was petty, and you have the root of the police force was the chain gang. It was slavery. Prior to slavery, they didn't have police. So you have a culture And that's what a lot of people understand. It's not that people don't like police officers, the persons. It's just the ideology that has been tied to that culture since we had to build this country. You know, it's deep, you know, but he was talking about how like he treated like he had children with a lot of these women. Like they were there because a lot of them were there because they loved him, you know, like it was a culture to get by and to make it through. But with cancel culture, they're like, lock this man away. He's a horrible person. But like he was born to a pimp and a prostitute that grew up to become people that gave him a little bit of hope. And that's kind of the problem is you don't realize like that demon, that skeleton, that closet, the door just hasn't popped open yet, you know? And the more that you stab at other people and go deep, and I'm glad like my generation has also started like this counterculture to the cancel culture. Like, hey, bro, like you're not gonna go over here and try to cancel nobody and you ain't perfect. But like that's the kind of the problem with our countries. We throw these macro blankets over everything. Like, it's okay. Get out of here. And I had to stop doing it. I had to learn as a leader, don't do that. Because the bureaucracy can kind of infiltrate everything surrounding you. And you don't want to become that leader. But once I became that selfless guy, bro, I stopped thinking about a promotion. I was a lieutenant when I deployed. But in the beginning, I'm like, man, if I make this captain pay, I can make this. Wrong answer. Because that type of mentality infiltrates everything that you do.
Yes.
And so you're
selfish.
And then you start looking at other people. You start counting their money. You start to become bitter. And Jordan Peterson, you know, that's when I started listening to the book because it changed my life, because it was like, focus on who you were yesterday, become a better person. And once I focused on the process, one day I checked my email and it said, there's a letter in your iPerms. iPerms is like the little system that they have for the Army documents. And, you know, I woke up early and I was, you know, checking my emails, and it said Captain Hamilton. And I was like, whoa, wait, what? So, you know, I went to the actual command and I was like, hey, bro, you know, obviously we both captains now. So I think, hey, bro, you know what I'm saying? I still throw the boss at him, you know, to like, you know, never outshine the master, because they need support too, and you underneath them. So even after I became a captain, it was send me, I'll go, whatever you need, bro, whatever you need, dog. Like, I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful to be here. And they back paid me a little bit, and it was great. And I was able to up child support to my baby mama. And I'm like, hey, you know, I'm gonna send you this. You know, we're gonna do this. We're gonna figure this out. And once I started looking at things from a give, and don't ask, without any thought process of the result, I just started being blessed and started seeing the opportunities for what they were. And there were opportunities for me to grow and for me to have different conversations with the troops. Yeah. And to get into their head, save that money. Put that money away.
Dude, that's one of the things that I love about the stuff that you talk about, because you hit on that. I mean, your finances are so important, man. Because man, that's a form of modern day slavery.
It is. You know, and you put yourself in there.
Yeah. And you know, and it's not just with credit cards, but it's that whole structure.
Everything, Mike.
That whole I'm working just to pay my bills, you know, and
but you don't go ahead. No, a lot of it's self-imposed. That's the hardest part.
It is, yeah.
It's self-imposed.
Like it's self-imposed and it's not self-imposed.
Okay, go.
Let's go back and let's, you know, if we take that the pimp approach to it, you know, if we look at it like, you know, he was a product of that subculture.
You know what? Hey, save that. We're gonna have another podcast here in a few weeks. We're gonna talk about, I want to talk about the system. We're gonna get there. This actually might be we might do our own series where we get together. If you got time in the future, maybe we get together once a month, and we just go. We put a blanket quote up there, and we'll just dissect it. So we'll get there, brother. We'll get there. Yeah, nah, man. We go on for hours, because I feel like once here, right? Mike, I know you try to lure me in because you like long podcasts. That's what you're doing,
dude.
You like we gonna make this one 2 hours. Dude, I think about that the whole time. I was looking at the
because
clock.
when you have somebody good to have a conversation with, you know, and like you said, man, it's a lot of it's about the conversations, man.
Conversation is the greatest drug,
dude. It is, and especially when you learn from them conversations and it makes you better. You know, it's you evolve as a person.
Well, you forced me to think. Yeah. You just said what you just said because that's that black and white sword coming out. Remember, like it's self-imposed, but it's really not when you ain't got no other way to think about money.
Yeah,
you ain't never. My mama did the same thing that that I started doing. I just made more money on a different level because they worked their fingers off to the bone. Even though we didn't have anything, my parents had some of the greatest work ethic I've ever seen. The problem is managing that work ethic and not running on the hamster wheel. But that's for the next generation to learn. Stop running on that hamster wheel, and we'll get there. But I've watched. It was from learning from their personal issues and stuff like that I've grown. Like I look just like my dad at times. I look just like my mom at times. It's kind of weird. I never thought I looked like my dad because I don't know. I always was a mama's boy, and but I'm built like my dad. So it's like if I can take this human being right now that they gave me, no matter how homeless we might have been, no matter how things got mismanaged. No, I got adopted my senior year, but I don't have any bitterness towards anybody because of grace. Absolutely. People that have been addicted like yourself changed my life because they were some of the hardest working people I've ever seen. Yeah. I knew people who would smoke a pound, come in and knock out all the slicing when I was a general manager. Like obviously I'm like, bruh, you stink. Like I need you to go spray on that cologne, swap the shirt. Like I know you can do the job, bruh. Like I got you here because you're the hardest working person I've ever known. But man, Mike, I have left my store in the middle of a rush to go called on one of my other employees. He was in the college, and I was like, "Hey, you gonna drive my car, and I'm gonna drive his car to the store so we can get him to work." Because he was pulled over by the cops. Yeah. My man ain't had no license. He ain't had nothing.
Dude,
I can smell the sauce on his breath.
That's like, a whole nother conversation to have too.
It's deep, man. It's deep. But you know what? I appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking about things. I got a list of things here that we can talk about in a bunch of other episodes. But I also got to work in the morning. Nah, you good, bro? Man, it's like I don't even know why I think the last time when we be on the phone, we be talking for like hours, and I don't even realize I'm like I gotta.
I have that.
I gotta go, but dude, you know what? I appreciate you coming on the platform, and we're gonna have many more discussions. Maybe we start a recovery series of identifying things, and we run that under the banner because the Hungry Millennial Network is for everybody. I originally came up with it because I was like, well, I need a network for a platform for millennials, but Instagram was the platform at the time. But I didn't know 3 years later that I would have some more resources to get a camera, get a mic from Amazon. Amazon has been my best friend. And
shout out to Jeff Bezos.
You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, Jeff, if you watching, dog, we appreciate you. You know what I'm saying?
Jeff Bezos.
But yeah, so the Hungry Millennial Network is a banner for everybody, anything. I just wanted to. I don't know if you saw, I deleted the actual Hungry Millennial Network page because I was like, well, if I create a podcast page, then it's kind of a better way to create a banner that way.
It's an evolution, man.
Yeah, and it keeps evolving.
Everything you do is going to be an evolution.
But and on YouTube, you see the old videos, man. It was rough. Like I'm sitting in my car, like hey, forget positive vibes. It was one of our first videos. I was like, positive vibes ain't gonna get you no results. I was like, my baby mama don't believe in me. People, what I mean? And
were you going all David Goggins?
Oh, I was. and the thing was, man, I had read that book at the time, and I was on my black and white truth.
That stuff's infectious, man. That energy's infectious.
That energy, you gotta mold it into what you got. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I ain't going and running no 100-mile marathons no time soon. I'll do 10 miles for fun for myself, but I won't do it on the Army 10-miler. I'm weird. Like I'm not a trend person.
You better run faster because something's chasing me.
Yeah. Okay. Man, you know what? Man, Mike, I appreciate you, man. Our conversations go on and on. So do you have any questions for me about anything coming up or anything, any quick fire questions, or is it gonna send us down a rabbit hole?
Dude, I just want you to know, man, I really appreciate, not only those inspiring and kind words, that you gave me a while back, man, but just your thirst for knowledge and your hunger for growth is really amazing. I really think that people like yourself and myself, we come from very different backgrounds, but I think that we're rarities in this world. People that can take in new information and grow and change from it. And I think that people like us, like you say, with that servant leadership heart, really just need to continue stepping out. I'm excited to see what you're going to do coming up. So I would like to really, like I said, I'm really excited to see what you do now that you're back. I know that you're doing the FedEx thing. I was hoping that you would go on and with the motivation type stuff, because I know that you're really into all that stuff. You dissect information really well.
I'm still going. I got you next. Yeah, that 50 Cent book. I actually found out that actually in Audible they have like you can clip. So in Audible you'll be listening to a chapter. So there's a bunch of books that I've read that I've went through like last couple of years. Now I'm going through each chapter and I'm clipping certain cliff notes in there and I'm typing my thoughts on them. So I'm going to be doing a podcast series on that. So the proactive pragmatism, the review is going to carry on. Yeah. So I'm going to be talking about those things. And then I've also got a list of motivational topics, everything from leadership to fitness that I'm going to be addressing. And then I'm also swinging this at the same time. So this is actually I started with Carson was the first one. The second was Dana. The third one was Alan Billinger. So this is actually the fourth Millennials Are podcast. It just hasn't been put out yet. So what I want to do is I wanted to feed the beast. And then that way while I'm gone, because I'm supposed to deploy again.
Are you?
So this one, I'm like, I can pay off the rest of my student loans and be completely debt free. So I'm like, and then I can also learn a lot. It's a great opportunity. So I'm supposed to be deploying again, but I literally want to push it to where like while I'm gone, like I want 52 plus episodes. So every week content will still launch. Cause I looked back and I looked on my YouTube channel and I've got well over 40 different podcast videos. They're like, you realize, like you just start posting and you're like, man, I'm covering things. Like I went to Google and I typed in proactive pragmatism and like, I've got a space out there. It's different, right? Yeah. Like, so that's fascinating. So that's where that's going. Like, I still got some motivational stuff coming. It's just, man, you don't realize how much all of it is to balance because I'm sending it out the surveys and then I'm receiving information. And then me, I want to make it personalized for the person. Like, I really want to have a deeper conversation on them. So I'm building the bios, just like I sent it to you, what questions I was going to go over. But I'm still like, and then after, it's crazy. When you're passionate about something, after you're like, man, I wish I would have asked that question. That would have been good. And then you're like, you know what? You're fallible, so take notes because you're human. So take the notes and then write it down and then talk to them about it later. But that's what I got going on. And so let the guests know how they can reach you and any last minute thoughts you have.
So if you're interested in Take Action Today, you can reach us through our Facebook page, which is I think it's TAT So Ill. And then we also have a website, which is takeactiontoday.net, which has been on the ticker. You can reach me through my email. We have some other things that are coming up. We're opening that resource center. We also plan to get back to our podcast soon, which I hope to have you on. Kind of put you in the hot seat and direct some questions at you a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about some things because I think you've got some really great stories to tell. But
that's okay. All right. That's what you got going on.
I'm always available for anybody ever wants to talk about recovery, wants to talk about substance use, homelessness, any of that stuff. I mean, man, I'll talk about anything with anybody. I'm like you. I like hearing the conversations and talking to people.
Okay. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a podcast with the Mike Tyson on Millennials Are. He is with Take Action today. Mike, we appreciate you. We appreciate having you. Thank you for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Tyson.